A freezing winter dawn in 73 BC. 70 desperate men stand at the rim of Mount Vesuvius, staring into an abyss. 1,000-foot plunge to certain death waits below. Behind them, a massive Roman force, 50 times their size, slowly choking them out through starvation. The choice seems brutally simple: get slaughtered by Roman steel or become broken bodies on the rocks below. Then Spartacus gives an order that sounds completely insane. He tells his men to leap off the cliff. Now, if you trusted the Roman military records from that day, what came next should have been a mass execution disguised as suicide. No trails existed on that side of the volcano. No ladders, no climbing ropes, no miracle escape hatch. The Roman general, Claudius Glaber, was so confident about the laws of physics that he didn't even station guards on the cliffside. After all, gravity doesn't make deals. Jump off that edge, you're dead. But here's the thing about history: it gets written by those who survive. When Spartacus and his army went over that cliff edge, they didn't shatter on impact. They disappeared into thin air. By the time you finish this video, you'll discover how one brilliant leader transformed a death leap into the most devastating ambush in ancient warfare. You'll witness the genius engineering trick they used to cheat certain death, and you'll learn exactly what happened when those Roman soldiers peered over the edge and realized every single gladiator had vanished. The year 73 BCE. Mount Vesuvius rises ominously against the Italian horizon. Not yet famous as the volcano destined to bury Pompeii, but about to witness destruction of a different kind. 70 escaped gladiators huddle on its slopes, encircled by 3,000 Roman troops. These rebels possess no real armor, no proper weaponry, no formal military education beyond what they learned killing each other in the arena. Down in his command tent, the Roman general sleeps peacefully, absolutely certain that sunrise will deliver effortless victory. He's blockaded the only route down the mountain. His forces control every possible exit. The slaves are cornered like condemned animals in a pen. But when darkness falls completely, something begins stirring among those trapped gladiators. Their commander, a Thracian warrior whose name will thunder through the ages, stands studying the sheer cliff face, dropping 200 feet into blackness below. Everyone insists it's impossible to climb down. Everyone believes they're already corpses waiting to fall. But to understand how impossibility became victory, we need to rewind 48 hours to when Roman blood first stained Italian earth. If you're captivated by history's most shocking battlefield reversals, smash that like button and subscribe for more legendary war stories. Hit the notification bell so you never miss another incredible military upset. Now let me transport you back to 73 BCE, when Roman arrogance created its own nightmare. 73 BCE. The Roman Republic dominates the Mediterranean world, its power constructed on a foundation of systematic human suffering. Walk through any Roman street and 1 out of every 3 people you pass wears invisible shackles of slavery. They labor in the fields, construct the monuments, and perish for crowd entertainment in the arena. Rome's entire economy feeds on stolen human lives. In Capua, 200 miles south of Rome, stands the gladiator training facility owned by Lentulus Batiatus, a literal factory of death where human beings are molded into killers for public amusement. Within these walls, 3 names would soon strike terror into every Roman citizen's heart. Spartacus, the Thracian mystery, former soldier. Some accounts claim he once fought for Rome itself before chains claimed him. In the arena, he moved like death incarnate, every strike calculated, economical, lethal. But behind those merciless eyes operated a tactical genius capable of seeing far beyond sand and slaughter. Crixus, the Gallic fury. Where Spartacus fought with surgical precision, Crixus fought with volcanic rage. Built like a human battering ram, he could splinter shields using nothing but raw strength. Crowds adored his savage fighting style, never realizing that beneath the bloodlust burned dreams of vengeance against every Roman who'd ever wielded a whip. Oenomaus, the Celtic tactician. Older than his companions, his body a roadmap of battle scars. He grasped something his younger brothers were still learning: brute force without strategy equals worthless. He'd survived longer than any gladiator had reason to expect, and he planned to die as a free man. These warriors should have been natural enemies, Thracian, Gaul, and Celt, forced to butcher each other for Roman entertainment value. But in the filthy barracks of Batiatus' school, they discovered unity. The catalyst, Batiatus decided to sell them for a special death match event. Better to die pursuing freedom than to perform one more time for Roman pleasure. The escape itself became instant legend. 200 gladiators armed with nothing but kitchen utensils and meat cleavers stolen from the school's cooking area. Security guards caught completely unprepared. Within minutes, the unthinkable occurred, gladiators flooding through Capua's streets. Only 70 made it beyond the city walls. But those 70 were about to shake Rome's foundations to the core. Here's where Roman arrogance signed its own death warrant. The Senate didn't deploy actual legions. Why waste elite soldiers on runaway kitchen workers? They appointed Gaius Claudius Glaber, a politician more comfortable with bureaucracy than battlefield command, and handed him 3,000 militia troops. Citizen soldiers hungry for easy glory against poorly equipped slaves. What happened next shattered all conventional military wisdom. Within mere days, those 70 gladiators had multiplied to 700, as slaves deserted their owners to join the rebellion. Word spread like wildfire across the countryside. Gladiators had defeated Roman guards. The impossible had already happened once. Maybe it could happen again. Spartacus, however, had a strategy brewing that would obliterate Roman confidence forever. Glaber marched from Rome leading 3,000 militia, their bronze helmets catching sunlight like a river of metal. These weren't Rome's legendary professional legionaries who'd crushed Carthage and conquered Greece. These were merchants and farmers playing dress-up soldier, motivated by promises of easy victory and slave auction profits. They sang marching songs, already mentally dividing imaginary treasure. What Glaber didn't understand would destroy him. His militia carried standard-issue equipment, short swords, rectangular shields, throwing javelins. But they lacked the single ingredient that made Roman legions genuinely invincible: combat-forged discipline earned through years of campaigning. They were civilians wearing armor, about to confront professional killers. The equipment mismatch should have been decisive. The gladiators had grabbed kitchen tools during their breakout, meat cleavers, cooking spits, a handful of corroded practice swords from the training facility. They'd ambushed one equipment wagon, gaining maybe 24 real weapons among 700 fighters. Against 3,000 armed soldiers, it seemed like a sick joke. But here's where the story takes a wild turn. Spartacus didn't choose to make his stand on flat terrain where Roman numbers would crush them instantly. He selected Mount Vesuvius, not yet the famous volcano that would bury entire cities, but a mountain blanketed in wild vegetation and dense woodland. Locals avoided it, whispering that angry gods slept restlessly in its caverns. The mountain thrust upward like a giant stone fist from the Campanian plain. Lower slopes crawled with thick plant life, but the upper elevations featured sheer volcanic rock cliffs. Most critically, only one narrow path led to the summit, barely wide enough for 3 men walking shoulder to shoulder. A natural fortress with one fatal architectural flaw. No escape route whatsoever. Glaber arrived and immediately recognized what every military textbook would confirm: the slaves had imprisoned themselves. He positioned his forces at the base of the single path, establishing a textbook siege operation. Why risk Roman casualties attacking uphill when starvation would accomplish the mission? His engineers calculated the gladiators possessed maybe 3 days of water, perhaps a week of food with strict rationing. Let them eat weeds, Glaber reportedly told his officers. We'll gather their corpses when they're too weak to grip their kitchen utensils. But Glaber overlooked one critical detail that would cost him absolutely everything. While he counted down days until inevitable surrender, the gladiator numbers were exploding. Every night, small groups of escaped slaves crept through the forests, drawn by whispers of gladiators who had beaten Romans in combat. 70 became 300, then 500, then 700. Each new arrival brought fresh intelligence about Roman positions, guard schedules, vulnerabilities. Spartacus organized them with arena-trained efficiency. Crixus drilled the strongest in gladiatorial combat methods. Oenomaus taught group tactics, transforming a disorganized mob into something resembling military units. But everyone understood the brutal mathematics of siege warfare. 700 starving men, even trained killers, couldn't punch through 3,000 soldiers defending the only path down. The Romans settled into comfortable patterns. Glaber posted rotating sentries at the path entrance, but why exhaust his troops? The slaves were trapped like animals in a cage. Dice games erupted. Wine appeared mysteriously. The militia started treating the whole affair like a camping expedition with guaranteed victory waiting at the end. They built cooking fires, swapped stories, laughed about how they'd spend their share of the slave auction gold. Up on the mountain, gladiators gazed down at Roman fires multiplying like earthbound stars. Some argued for a desperate suicide charge down the path, better to die fighting than waste away from hunger. But Spartacus stood at the cliff's edge, studying something in the fatting twilight. The sheer rock face plummeted 200 feet straight down, impossible for men to descend. Except Spartacus wasn't studying the rock itself. Each time observers thought they understood the situation, new information shifted everything. The wild vines covering the upper mountain seemed like meaningless decoration. The gladiators' desperate position appeared absolutely hopeless. Glaber's confidence seemed completely justified. What happened next would become military academy legend. 21:00 hours. Darkness devours Mount Vesuvius completely. Below, Roman campfires dot the mountainside like a constellation of overconfidence. Above, Spartacus grips a length of wild vine, testing its tensile strength. The plant grows thick on these upper slopes, some vines as thick as a man's wrist, strengthened by volcanic mineral-rich soil. "It will never support our weight," Crixus growls, watching Spartacus wrap the vine around a massive boulder. The Gaul was designed for smashing through shield formations, not whatever insanity the Thracian is planning. But Spartacus has noticed something during their days trapped on the summit. These aren't ordinary vines. The volcanic soil has produced plants with unusual strength, their fibers dense and remarkably flexible. More importantly, they grow in vast tangles that can be harvested without ever leaving the clifftop. What follows isn't heroic grandeur, it's desperate innovation under impossible pressure. Groups of gladiators begin cutting vines with their pathetic collection of blades. Others strip leaves and twist the vines into crude rope. Oenomaus, ever practical, organizes the labor with arena-efficient precision. Men who once fought to entertain crowds now labor to survive. 22:00 hours. The first rope is complete, 50 feet of braided vine, not nearly enough to reach the bottom of a 200-foot cliff. But gladiators have learned something valuable in the arena. Survival demands adaptation. They begin splicing vines together using techniques learned from repairing arena equipment. Each connection point is stress-tested with the combined weight of 2 men. Then Spartacus does something completely unexpected. He volunteers to descend first. This is the moment everything changes for Rome. Military commanders typically send subordinates to test dangerous situations. But Spartacus understands what Glaber never could. These aren't soldiers blindly following orders. They're desperate men clinging to hope. If hope dies on that cliff face, the entire rebellion dies with it. 23:00 hours. Spartacus wraps the vine rope around his torso and approaches the cliff edge. 700 men collectively hold their breath. Below, a Roman sentry walks his rounds, spear glinting in firelight. The mathematics are brutally simple. If the rope snaps, Spartacus plummets 200 feet onto volcanic rock. If he survives the descent, he faces 3,000 enemies alone. The first few yards are the worst. The rope groans under his weight, volcanic rock sharp as fractured glass shreds his palms. But here's where gladiator conditioning proves invaluable. Years of gripping weapons through pain have created hands capable of enduring punishment that would cripple ordinary men. Spartacus descends hand over hand, each movement controlled despite screaming muscles. 50 feet down, catastrophe strikes. The rope snags on a rock projection, sawing against the sharp edge with every tiny movement. Spartacus hangs suspended in empty space, calculating odds. Pull too aggressively and the vine will sever. Move too cautiously and Roman sentries might spot movement on the cliff face. But darkness has become their weapon. Spartacus shifts his body weight carefully, pendulum swinging along the cliff until the rope pulls free from the outcrop. The descent continues. 100 feet, 150. Each yard an eternity of burning muscles and held breath. 00:00 hours. Midnight arrives. Spartacus's feet contact solid earth behind Roman defensive lines. The impossible has become possible. But one man behind enemy positions means nothing strategically. He signals upward, a low whistle mimicking a night bird's call. The next 30 seconds will determine everything. On the clifftop, Crixus seizes a rope. The Gallic giant who can shatter shields now trusts his entire life to woven plant fibers. His descent is less graceful than Spartacus's technique, more controlled fall than proper climb, but the volcanic vines hold true. One by one, gladiators rappel down the cliff face, young slaves with trembling hands, arena veterans covered in scar tissue, kitchen workers who have never held weapons in combat. Each descent is gambling with death itself. Ropes fray, hands bleed rivers. Men bite through their own tongues to suppress screams as volcanic rock shreds exposed skin. 0100 hours, 50 gladiators on the ground, then 100. The Roman sentries continue their lazy patrols, never glancing up at the cliff everyone knows is impossible to descend. Wine and gambling hold more fascination than actual duty. But the nightmare isn't finished yet. Some ropes snap under repeated use, dropping men the final 20 feet onto volcanic stone. Bones crack audibly, blood flows freely. But even injured gladiators crawl into rough formation, prepared to fight or die. Pain is an old familiar companion from arena days. 0130 hours, 300 gladiators stand in Roman darkness. Weapons are distributed strategically, kitchen knives to those with training, rocks and vine lengths to everyone else. This isn't a professional army. This is a pack of cornered wolves who have discovered a way to bare their fangs. Here's the detail history books don't emphasize. The descent consumed nearly 4 hours. 4 hours when any Roman guard glancing upward would have spotted dark shapes against gray stone. 4 hours when a single snapping rope sound could have alerted sentries. 4 hours when absolutely everything should have collapsed catastrophically. 0200 hours. 700 men stand precisely where Rome declared no man could possibly stand. They form into rough combat groups, Crixus leading the physically strongest, Oenomaus organizing flanking units, Spartacus pointing toward the Roman camp spread before them like an undefended feast. The transformation is beginning. Starving slaves are about to become a fighting force using Roman equipment stripped from Roman corpses. By midnight's darkest hour, 700 armed former slaves stand where Rome insisted no man could exist. The killing ground is prepared. All that remains is baptizing it with blood. 0200 hours. 700 shadows flow through darkness toward 3,000 sleeping Romans. Spartacus raises his hand, the arena signal for combat readiness. Behind him, gladiators grip kitchen knives and sharpened wooden stakes. In minutes, they'll either taste freedom or embrace death. The Roman encampment sprawls before them, a disorganized mess of canvas tents and scattered campfires. Glaber hasn't bothered with proper defensive fortifications. Why construct walls when your enemy is trapped on a mountain? Sentries walk predictable routes, more concerned with staying warm than watching for impossible attacks from impossible directions. 0215 hours. Spartacus gestures toward the nearest sentry position. Crixus nods, moving with shocking stealth for such an enormous man. The Roman guard never hears death approaching on silent feet. A hand clamps over his mouth. A kitchen blade discovers the vulnerable gap beneath his helmet's edge. The first Roman dies in absolute silence, his spear transferring to eager slave hands. What Glaber doesn't understand is already killing him, and will kill 2,800 of his men. 0230 hours, the infiltration begins in earnest. Gladiators spread through the camp's perimeter like oil seeping through fabric. Each dead sentry means another genuine weapon. Each captured spear transforms a kitchen slave into something resembling a soldier. The mathematics of power shift with every silent execution. Then arrives the moment destined to echo through centuries. A Roman soldier stumbling from his tent for a midnight bathroom break walks directly into Oenomaus's group. His scream, "The slaves are behind us," shatters the night like breaking crystal. 0300 hours. Panic detonates through the Roman camp like wildfire. Soldiers tumble from tents half-dressed, frantically grabbing for weapons in pitch darkness. They expect to find a handful of desperate slaves attempting a suicide charge. Instead, 700 efficient killers flow between tents like a tide of accumulated vengeance. Gladiators understand how to kill efficiently. Arena training takes complete control. Spartacus's fighters don't waste energy on dramatic battle cries or theatrical charges. They kill with mechanical precision. Thrust, twist, move to the next target. Every dead Roman means superior equipment for a former slave. The next 3 hours will determine absolutely everything. In the command area, officers desperately attempt forming their troops into defensive units. Form ranks, a centurion screams into the chaos, shield wall. But panicked militia cannot form organized ranks in total darkness with enemies already among them, killing from every shadow. The centurion's commands end in a wet gurgle as Crixus's captured spear finds his throat. 03:15 hours, full assault launches. What happens next defies all established military doctrine. Roman military success depends on organized formations, disciplined movement, coordinated attacks executing in perfect synchronization. But there are no formations possible in suffocating darkness, no discipline when death materializes from every shadow, no coordination when officers die before completing orders. Individual combat erupts everywhere simultaneously. One Roman soldier, genuinely brave despite overwhelming fear, manages to rally a small group of comrades. They lock shields, presenting spears outward in textbook defensive position. But these aren't hardened legionaries with years of campaign experience. When Crixus leads a frontal charge directly at their shields while other gladiators flank through the darkness, their formation crumbles like dry sand. Watch what happens when desperation collides with tactical genius. The gladiators don't fight like conventional soldiers. They fight like survivors who have learned every dirty trick. Where Romans anticipate formal battle lines, slaves flow like water around obstacles. Where Romans shout for officers to provide orders, gladiators communicate with arena hand signals, silent and devastatingly effective. 03:30 hours. The cascade of Roman failures accelerates exponentially. Without officers, militia revert to what they truly are, terrified civilians playing soldier. Some attempt fleeing toward the mountain path, running directly into more waiting gladiators. Others abandon weapons entirely to run faster, making themselves effortless prey. The organized Roman force becomes a panicked mob. And mobs die easily. This is where the narrative takes its darkest turn. In Glaber's command tent, the praetor jolts awake to screaming and metallic clashing. He grabs his sword, bellowing for his personal guards. No answer comes, only silence and distant death sounds. Outside his tent, shadows move with lethal purpose. His expensive ceremonial armor, designed to impress rather than genuinely protect, tangles hopelessly as he attempts dressing in absolute panic. Then physics itself becomes a weapon against Rome. Romans fleeing downhill through pitch darkness trip over tent ropes, cooking equipment, their own accumulating dead. Gravity pulls panicked men into fatal tumbles. The mountain that trapped the slaves now channels Romans into predetermined killing zones, where gladiators wait with stolen spears. 04:00 hours. Individual combat vignettes paint the night in layers of blood. A young Roman, perhaps 17 years old, faces a scar-covered gladiator veteran. The boy holds his shield high, maintaining textbook-perfect form. The gladiator feints left. The boy responds correctly, exactly as trained. Then a kitchen knife finds kidney from an angle no military manual teaches. Youth and formal training mean absolutely nothing against hard experience and desperate determination. The killing is methodical, the victory is absolute. Spartacus finds himself confronting 3 Romans who have managed donning full armor. They advance in proper formation, shields locked together. In the arena, this would represent a death sentence for any single fighter. But Spartacus has learned something revolutionary on the mountain. Sometimes impossible is just another word for unexpected. He throws volcanic dust in their faces, rolls beneath their spear thrusts, and hamstrings one from behind in a move no honorable combat would include. As their formation disintegrates, other gladiators finish them efficiently. But the horror deepens further. Across the chaotic camp, one gladiator recognizes his former owner among the Roman officers. The man who purchased him at auction, branded him like livestock, forced him to murder friends for entertainment value. What follows transcends simple combat. This is years of accumulated rage given physical form. The master's expensive imported sword proves utterly useless against someone who has absolutely nothing left to lose. 04:30 hours. Dawn approaches, revealing total transformation. Where Romans camped confidently, gladiators now strip armor from cooling corpses. Bronze helmets replace filthy rags on slave heads. Military sandals replace bare bleeding feet. Most importantly, genuine weapons fill hands that hours earlier held only kitchen utensils. Here's where it becomes Rome's recurring nightmare. The statistics are staggering almost beyond belief. Of 3,000 Roman militia, fewer than 200 escape the mountain alive. Those who flee spread tales that grow with each retelling, demons rising from solid rock, shadows that kill without sound, the impossible becoming horrible reality. Weapons and armor for 2,800 men now equip the growing slave army. But more than physical equipment changed hands that blood-soaked night. Every gladiator who dons Roman armor undergoes profound psychological transformation. They are no longer merely escaped slaves. They are a legitimate army that destroyed Romans in open combat. Throughout the battle, pattern interrupts keep the horror fresh and disorienting. Each time Romans believe they've organized resistance, it evaporates. Each time slaves seem potentially overwhelmed, Roman panic creates fresh opportunities. The battle isn't one single event, but hundreds of individual fights where desperation systematically defeats discipline. 0500 hours. The sun rises on a fundamentally changed world. Where Roman confidence camped yesterday, only death remains today. Glaber's body is discovered near his tent, pierced by a dozen different weapons. No single gladiator claims the kill, suggesting he died in the general chaos rather than some heroic individual duel. This single moment changed Rome permanently. News travels faster than fleeing survivors can run. Slaves haven't merely escaped, they've completely annihilated a Roman military force. The impossible has happened, and every slave throughout Italy hears the message clearly: Rome can bleed. As dawn breaks fully, the impossible has crystallized into reality. 700 kitchen slaves have transformed into an army of 2,800, armed with Roman steel and armored in Roman bronze. But transformation always requires blood as payment. And the bill is about to come due with compound interest 0530 hours. Dawn paints Mount Vesuvius in shades of crimson, fitting colors for the carnage below. Spartacus stands among the Roman dead, no longer a slave but not yet fully comprehending what he's become. Around him, gladiators stumble through the massacre's aftermath, stripping equipment with mechanical efficiency born from years of scavenging arena sand after fights. The final hour of slaughter had been absolute and merciless. Roman military records, carefully vague about this particular disaster, suggest fewer than 200 militia escaped alive. Those who survived ran carrying tales that expanded with each telling. Slaves descending from the heavens, shadows that murdered without mercy, the death of Roman invincibility itself. But dawn reveals the impossible made tangible. Exact casualty numbers tell the complete story. 2,800 Roman dead litter the mountainside. Their equipment, hastily inventoried by practical Onomaus, includes full armor for nearly 3,000 fighters, short swords, spears, shields, even the camp's supply wagons sitting untouched in the chaos. What happens next is still analyzed in military academies worldwide. The slave army transformation is instant and irreversible. Men who fought with kitchen knives now heft perfectly balanced gladius swords. Backs marked by whip scars now bear bronze breastplates. Most importantly, minds shaped by servitude now understand one fundamental truth. Romans die exactly like everyone else. Individual aftermath stories spread like wildfire through the countryside. A young slave discovers his former master among the dead, the man who sold his entire family at auction. He claims the Romans' armor but deliberately leaves the body unlooted, a message to anyone who finds it. A gladiator who lost an eye in the arena takes a centurion's plumed helmet, its decoration marking him as something more than property ever could. Each piece of equipment carries symbolic weight far heavier than bronze words spreading across Italy travels on 2 sets of feet, fleeing Romans and escaping slaves. The Romans speak of military catastrophe, of impossible tactics, of certain death waiting on that mountain. But slaves hear an entirely different message. Gladiators possess weapons now. Gladiators achieved victory. Gladiators are recruiting. This is when Roman arrogance becomes genuinely fatal. The Senate's response reveals how profoundly they misunderstand what's actually happened. They don't declare national emergency. They don't recall veteran legions from distant frontiers. They send another praetor with more militia, absolutely certain that proper Roman authority will intimidate rebellious property back into submission.